Is recorded. So when I was a manager at BP, I recruited for BP in a lot of universities here in Illinois, a lot of Texas and other states. So I attended many career fairs, and I got to meet a lot of people from admissions. And I never forgot, I went to coffee with this young lady from admissions, and sadly enough, she shared that many of the students, and students are not the only guilty parties, as parents as well, they really don't do much planning. They just hop in a car and show up at the schools. So it's such an important decision to be made, yet very, very minimal planning goes into it. So with a little planning and coming up with some thoughtful questions for college visits, they do go a long way. So stay tuned, and we have our guest speaker who's going to share some great tips and pointers. So now, before we jump into the main part of the event, I want to go over some WIT announcements. So yeah, thank you, Reggie. So let's talk about the educational sessions. The Tech Talk Tuesday will continue on the last Tuesday of every month until the end of the school year in May. So for March 27th, we have the basic concepts of coding. So we're going to have a young software developer. She's Hispanic and works for Microsoft, and she's going to come and share her journey. She didn't think she was going to be a software developer, but she ended up in her journey becoming a software developer. She's going to share her journey and share some of the basics, some of the foundational concept of what it is to be doing coding. So I think that's great for students that some of them know that they want to go into coding, and some are not sure this would be a great session for them to attend. For April 29th, we have the Power of Data visualization tools. So companies are gathering enormous amounts of data, and they have all these tools and IA facilities that they use to analyze. The massive amount of data that they're gathering are being used for business insights and making better decisions. So again, we're going to have a business analyst, a data expert to come in and share her journey, how she ended up in this, in this role, and see if this is of interest to the students. Again, some people don't want to go into coding, they want to go into analyzing data science. This is the perfect session for them to explore and see if that's of interest. So if you notice, for May, we moved up the date to May 17th, because if we leave it for the last Tuesday of May, I don't think we'll have much participation, because everybody will be mentally already gone for spring vacation. I'm sorry, for summer vacation. So we moved it up to May 17th. We have a low code, no code program, and this is a new exciting concept, a newer and faster way to effectively build apps. So I think this will be very interesting to see something new, if it would be of interest to the students. So remember the dates, and please remind the students, and if you have friends, to register for these events. So the 2022 WIT scholarships. So we're very excited. This is the first year that we're working as a nonprofit organization, and we're proud that we have some scholarships that will be granted. So kudos to Ferris Ganima and the fundraising and donation committee. They've done a great job behind the scenes to be able to make sure that we have scholarships for the first year. So there's two types of scholarships. The first one is a financial needs scholarship that's renewable for 4 years, $2,500 to $5,000. The second one is open to all, non-renewable, one-time $500 to $1,000 scholarship. So again, those are the type of scholarships. Let's talk a little bit about the requirements. You need to be an active WIT mission participant. So if you've been attending these educational sessions, great, more power to it. You have points in your favor. So keep attending the educational sessions. They do feed into the decision making. So there's 2 essays to be answered. There's a financial position statement for the financial needs scholarship. We have 2 letters of recommendation. One at least has to be from a faculty, a current faculty, and then the school transcript. Now, it's very easy and straightforward to apply for the scholarships. It's on our website. Just be mindful of the date, closing on April 15th. And if you have any senior friends that were not able to attend the session, please remind them, hey, scholarships are open and the deadline is April 15th. So at this point, I wanted to kind of pause and see if there's any questions about the scholarships. I want to make sure that we can address any questions that the students might have or any of the administrators. Any questions? Good, okay. Well, if you think of any questions, you can reach us through email or through the website, any questions afterwards. So, okay, so without further ado, let me introduce you our guest speaker, Raji Shah. She's a senior at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, majoring in computer science and anthropology. So Raji, thank you for being our guest and welcome. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. So hello, everyone. I will be talking today a little bit about what it's like to prepare for college tours and how that could jumpstart your college career. And I'll start with giving a little bit of background about myself and my experiences, and then some of the tips and tricks I have when I was going through the process. So like you just heard, I'm Raji. I am a senior at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And this is a little bit of what my academic journey looks like. And so when I was in high school, I was doing college visits, like some of you all will. And that was a time where I, wasn't really sure of what I wanted to do with my life, very unclear, just still navigating my high school experience as well as the college application process. But it led me eventually to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And there is where I decided to study computer science and anthropology, which has been a really interesting experience as I've taken two very different disciplines and found a way to blend them. And then I made my way over to the internships and job board side of things once you get into college, and furthered my academic experience through places outside of college. And so this is a little bit what my journey looks like, and I will be digging a little bit deeper with you all. So my high school journey, how did I pick a college and a major? Which I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about those questions as well. So some of my interests in high school, they ranged from STEM related interests as well as to liberal arts, and then others like sports and fun things outside of school. And so some of these would be in the STEM category. I was in AP Computer Science, and I was taking coding classes, and this was sort of my first look into what software engineering looked like and how code worked and what were the building blocks of it. And this was really exciting to me. I grew up in Silicon Valley in California, and I'd always been surrounded by technology, but I had no idea how it worked. And so this gave me a lot of insight into it, and that was really exciting, and it was really intriguing to me. And that led me to participating in hackathons. And if you haven't heard what a hackathon is, it's essentially a place where you can go with a lot of other students. And sometimes they're 24 hours, sometimes you stay overnight, sometimes they're the entire weekend, and you go there and you work with teams and you just like build and hack together a project. And this was just like a really fun way to code. And I really loved the ones that were all about empowering women in particular, just because, sometimes, as we all know, STEM can be a really male dominated field. And so when I could see that I was being supported by other women that had similar interests, like that was really empowering. And so that was a way that I was also getting into coding aside from school. And then I was also participating in things like the Maker Faire, which was a festival that happened outside of school that allowed people from all different walks of life that were interested in making things. And so some of it was STEM related, some of it wasn't. I actually had a booth there for a couple of years because I used to make jewelry, and so I would sell it there. But I also loved all the other things that they were displaying, which would be like robotics and the latest AI things, and they would have 3D printers. And so this is where I was really just exploring what STEM was, and it was just, one step into the giant world of technology. On the other hand, I really loved other things outside of STEM. I started an upcycling club at my school, which was focused on like climate change and awareness of it, and then using materials that were often thrown away, we would upcycle them into art projects. And so, and then display them around school. And so I remember we created a really large art mural out of bottle caps. And so these are kind of fun things that I was doing with that. And then also volunteering. Kids in Art is an organization that works with kids with cancer, and they bring in volunteers as artists that kind of use art as a way of relieving pain. And so I was doing that, and that was a really fulfilling experience for me as well. And I was also on the varsity gymnastics team. And so you can see, like, I had interests ranging all over the place. And it was really hard to look at these interests and know how that would translate into a major or a college experience. And so I'll take you through my thought process when it came to that. So like I said, so many majors, which one do I pick? And so I looked at those interests I had, and I would encourage you all to do the same. Really kind of note down everything that you're interested in and what it is that you do in your free time and how that makes you fulfilled. And then I was also taking career quizzes, and that sounds really silly, and maybe that looks like BuzzFeed or it's a more serious one, but it helps kind of understand the types of careers that exist out there, especially when you have no idea what they look like. And then I was also talking to the adults in my life about their jobs and, you know, what is the things that they did in their job, why did they pick their jobs, how did they end up in those careers. And I think it's really important to sort of talk to as many people as you can, and especially people that you don't expect that, you know, you would like their job. You still get a lot of insight into how they went and navigated that process. And then the other thing I did was I looked through course requirements. And so I would look up a major that I was like, okay, this one seems kind of interesting, maybe a psychology. And I would look at it at different schools around me. And so I grew up in California, so a lot of the schools were like the University of California school system. And so I would look at psychology and look at their course requirements and what kind of courses were required to graduate, and if those interested in me. And then, you know, you keep digging. And so I was looking at, you know, I was on findmyprofessor.com and looking at the kind of professors that are available at these schools and what it is they taught. And so that's a little bit about how I was gaining and accumulating knowledge about each of these majors that I had an inkling of maybe I was interested in. And like I said at the bottom, remember that your major is not forever. I know I just told you guys I am majoring in computer science and anthropology, and I have loved studying it. But my career path after college might not be in this field. And so a lot of the people that I know, even the things that they're studying in school, don't have to relate to their later careers. And as you grow and change and learn things, so will your career path. So just keep that in mind.
So Reggie, this is Stella. I'm sorry. So back to your comment in the other slide. And I think that's so important because I think students put so much pressure that if I go this route and I pick this major, that it's forever. This is where I'm going to do like for, you know, and I think that's where there's a lot of pressure for students and say, wow, it's such a big decision. And I think it's something to keep in mind that you're exploring. You go your first year and you're like, well, this is not exactly what I thought. There is still time to change path, right? So I think that's where students, I think they put so much pressure on themselves because it's not like I know they get a lot of pressures from parents, and I put pressure on my kids sometimes, like, you have to make up your mind. But I think we put too much pressure on them, and they could explore different paths. And it's not until you go to college and try to see which one feels right. So I think the students have so much pressure that they need to keep that in mind, that it's not in stone, you know, that they can make changes further along. So it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think it's something like the statistic is like most college students will at least change their major 2 or 3 times while going through their college experience. So it's definitely a very normal thing that a lot of kids are going through. And sometimes you think the major sounds really interesting and the idea of it does, and you get into those classes and you realize it isn't a perfect fit and it's not something you're interested in, but it'll lead to something else. And so yeah, it's definitely something important to keep in mind when picking a major, that you can be led somewhere else later on in your college career, and it's no big deal.
Right, thank you.
Yeah. So then, again, like, we were looking through the majors, I personally kind of pulled up lists like this that would list all the different majors that are available at schools and all the popular majors, and kind of go through and highlight which one sounded interesting to me based on the other criteria I mentioned on the previous slide. And so personally, some of the ones I found really interesting while going through my application process with anthropology, psychology, computer science, political science, history, and sort of graphic design. And you can see a lot of these reflect my interests that I mentioned before as well. I realized I really cared about understanding the human experience, and that's where anthropology and psychology really fit in. But I was also really passionate about technology, and so I thought, computer science would be really cool to study. Really big into like politics and understanding how sort of our like politics works in our country, and so I was like, maybe that's cool, and history as well. And then I always loved art, and so graphic design sounded like a really interesting major. And so I kind of broke it down that way and used my interest to lead me to majors that I thought I could see myself studying. And then what I ended up picking after doing a lot of work and digging into these majors is that there are programs that also allow you to study two at the same time, which is what I'm currently doing. And so the University of Illinois has a really cool computer science plus X program, and the X can be filled in with a lot of other majors. And so I know we have computer science and chemistry, and computer science and statistics, a lot of others, but the one that really spoke to me was computer science and anthropology. And if you read the slides, a little bit more information about my major, but essentially I really cared about the intersection between technology and people, and how that would work in terms of human computer interaction. And a lot of that was about user experience design and how do people interact with technology, and really thinking about those questions. And so that's how I ended up picking my major. But I was applying to a lot of different majors, a lot of different schools. Obviously, not all schools have this major, and so sometimes I would just pick computer science, and then I have a second choice. I'd pick something like graphic design. But I remember to keep in mind that at the end of the day, it is allowed to change your major, and it's okay if you don't get your first choice major either. You can always switch later on after a couple of semesters. But the way that I realized that this was the right fit for me was just because I was so fascinated by this degree program. And like I'll talk about later, I visited the school and I talked to the director of anthropology, and she was telling me about this program and the really cool things that people had done in it. I was like, that sounds really fascinating and sounds exactly where I want to be. And so that's how I personally came to study what I do today. But when I was thinking about which colleges to apply to, obviously there are so many colleges that exist, and it's really, really hard to narrow down. You want to make sure you're not overworking yourself. So I knew people that were applying to 20, 30 different schools, which is a lot of work and a lot of money. And so I wanted to make sure that I was hitting like a good sweet spot over all the schools that I was applying to, and making sure that I was getting the ones that are, I think they're called safety schools, and then the ones that are mid-tier, and the ones that were seemed out of reach, but things that I was like, might as well give it a shot. And so the things that mattered to me when looking at the schools that I wanted to apply to, and some of the ones I applied to, you'll see their logos on the side, but their location. I mentioned before I grew up in California, and so a part of me really wanted to stay at home. So a lot of the schools I applied to were in that state, but I was also thinking about, how I wanted to push myself, my boundaries, and try something new. And so I was also applying to schools like the University of Illinois, because I knew I also had family here, and so I was like, it's not home, but it still felt comfortable to me, and it was still a location that I saw myself at. Also, size was taken into consideration. I realized that I really wanted to study at a bigger school, mostly because I thought that would offer me a lot more opportunity, and the diversity of larger schools really mattered to me. And it would also allow me to just explore more people and things and opportunities. So that's why I really wanted to study a big school. But everyone has their own preference. And then I also realized that the University of Illinois had a top tier program for my major, computer science. It's at the top five, one of the top five schools for it. So it's not the most important. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day, but which I've come to realize. But at the time, that was what I was taking into consideration. And then scholarships was really important to me. I needed to know that school offered scholarships and that they had a very diverse program and they were working towards diversity and making sure that was one of their core principles. And then the environment, and not just like the environment in terms of weather and things like that, but also what was the environment like as a student? And really supportive? Was the school supportive of their students? Did they care about things like mental health? And all of these things I was taking into consideration. And then vibes. That was a little bit harder to explain, but when I talk a little bit about college visits, I think that is a really key aspect of just walking onto a university and knowing that it feels like a good fit, that you feel comfortable there. And that's something you'll realize when you go through a tour or you're just walking around. How you feel there really matters because it's somewhere you're going to be for, 4 to 5 years. And so you want to make sure that it is somewhere where you are able to learn and feel comfortable learning. So, University of Illinois, how did I know that that was the right school for me? Like I mentioned before, it was a competitive program for my major. I knew that was a really important piece to me because I wanted to be at a school that had really intelligent people around me that I could learn from, and was putting in resources into my program so that I was getting a really good education and that all the money I was paying for college would pay off. It was close to family in a way. I had family that lived in Illinois, and so I knew, if anything had happened as an out-of-state student, I had people I could rely on. And then when I was doing my college visits, I realized I loved the campus and campus town, and the University of Illinois is really unique in that it is kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it allows this really cool campus town feeling. You are able, it's far away from really most large cities, and so people there are more willing to stay engaged in the community, and they do a lot of work that's for the community, and I really love that. And then I was really wanting a new and challenging experience, and my school has allowed me to do that for various reasons. But these are kind of some of the reasons why I chose my school. But reasons will differ from person to person. And I hope me sharing some of that will help you kind of understand how you want to go about choosing your college when the time comes. But again, that process is very personal. And so these just kind of what I was thinking about.
So Reggie, a question for you. So for University of Illinois, what was your second choice or your second runner-up school, out of curiosity?
That's a great question. As in terms of schools that I applied to, I actually really wanted to go to the University of Southern California, USC, because they had a really amazing program that was created by Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine, and it focused on teaching students about business, technology, and design. And so all the things that I really care about and I've actually done in my college experience here, but they created this program, but they only accepted like 20 people. So I knew it was a long shot, but that was kind of, the program that I really wanted to be at. But when I was choosing between schools, I was considering Arizona State University because they had offered me a really great scholarship. And so again, I also had family that lived in Arizona. And so that was the other school that I was considering. But I decided against it because UC just had the major that I really wanted.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, of course. So that's kind of a little bit about my high school journey and kind of my thought process going into college. It's a lot messier than it looks on paper, because I think a lot of this is after I've reflected some and thought about where I was at. But I remember at the time I had no idea what I was doing, and so just like going through the motions. But it led me to my college journey, and so I'll share a little bit about what my college experience has looked like. So some of my academic experiences, I mentioned before, it led me to my internships and job search, and that has been a really big portion of, my learning at the university. And so it's not just coursework that has taught me a lot, but actually my experiences outside of it. And so some of the companies I've worked at are kind of below Cisco, Target, and now I'm a product management intern at Sezzle. But I use my internships as a way to explore different parts of technology. And so going into college, my assumption was that software engineering was really the only place that I could work in technology, and that was the thing that was most talked about. And so I started in that department, and I was like, okay, well, how do I become a software engineer? And so I was applying to internships or software engineering internships specifically, and gaining that experience. And that taught me a lot and has taught me to be a better programmer. And they were really interesting building out projects on engineering teams. And I was also doing design internships at the same time because I had, been a part of a design club on campus. And so I thought, design was really cool. And I was thinking, maybe that's another avenue, a career that I want to explore. And I realized through design and software engineering internships, what I really wanted was a blend of both, which actually led me to product management. And if that isn't something, a term you're familiar with, essentially it's product managers are the people that own the product. And so, for example, if you look at Apple, iPhone could be a product, for example, and there's someone that's driving the product roadmap for it, what the goals are for the product, really understanding customer behavior. And so that was kind of the best of both worlds for me. As a product manager, I'm able to lean into my anthropology experience, understanding people and customers, as well as working with engineers to build out the product. And so my knowledge of engineering has really helped there, and working and kind of relaying things to engineering teams. So that's where I'm at currently, but I know my career will continue to shift and change. But my internships have really helped me understand what it is that is important to me and what I care about. So the other academic experience I've had are in research projects, and those have been extremely valuable as well. I actually worked on a really cool project with virtual reality as an undergrad. And essentially the project that we were working on was using virtual reality to create experiences in caves for archaeology students. And so we wanted a way for them to be able to practice archaeology skills while in a virtual environment. And so I was tasked with creating those environments, and then it was turned into a class. And so I was a TA for it and kind of saw people use the environments that we were creating. So that was really cool. That was another thing that I was trying out aside from coursework. And then of course there is the coursework and the classes I was taking. And I think it's really important to take classes outside of your major as well, so that you get a more holistic understanding of things in the world. So I've taken some really cool history classes, took a really cool course on Grimm's fairy tales, super interesting stuff that had nothing to do with what I was studying, but it gave me a lot of context about the world. And as being a student, exams are a big portion of it. And so study groups have been really instrumental to helping me stay on track of studying and making sure that's something that I'm prioritizing as a student. But, with academic experiences come fun experiences, and that part is really important too. And so, as a college student, I have had a lot of fun. The pandemic has ruined a little bit of it. No one could have seen that coming, but of the time that I've spent on campus, I've tried a couple of things. And so I think that dorms are a really important experience as a freshman. And I would encourage you all to live in the dorms, just because it helps you create friendships and bonds with people in a way that you probably never would have before. Because living with people is very different. It bonds you in a way that you either create best friends for life or enemies, but generally best friends. And it's really, really cool. And the cafeteria experience is amazing as well, because, so many people are coming to one place to eat, and people love eating and people love meeting new people. And this is where a lot of that goes down. And then when it comes to clubs I joined, that I would recommend that clubs are the #1 way of meeting people and making friends. And that's how I have made my closest friends, through joining some of the clubs that I have. And so some of them were Design for America, which is the design club I referenced earlier. It has been an amazing experience being a part of that, and helps me also develop leadership experiences that I talk a lot about in interviews and such, and then women in computer science as well. And I think it's really important to surround yourself by people that share the same values and the same interests as you. And clubs like, WCS has really helped you do that, and it helps me feel empowered. I walk into a class and there's all men and me. And so it's important to surround yourself by people that value you and your experience. And then I also tried out intramural sports. And like I said earlier, I used to do gymnastics. And so I, for a little bit, was in Flip and Illini. And so I would use that as an excuse to work out in a gym and mess around and do flips and stuff. But I mentioned this all because I think it's really important to really have fun in college. I think it's really hard to just keep your head down and study all the time. And I don't think that's what college is for. And so I think it's really about varying your experiences and learning from every aspect of it. And socializing will teach you a lot as well. And so I just mentioned all of this to make sure that you are making the most of your college experience and keeping this in mind.
So Raji, I have a comment. So here you mentioned clubs, and I think as freshmen, I think it's great that you've had like 3 internships. Kudos to you. That's great. But I think a lot of students, when they're in their freshman year, struggle to get internships. So what they do is they do a lot of clubs, right? Where you can get leadership positions and you do research. And I think that adds to your resume, shows some of the leadership, some of the skills that are needed for internships. But as freshmen, it's a stepping stone, right? You get into these clubs, you meet people, and you develop these skills. They go in your resume, and then hopefully internships will follow that, right? I think, again, the first year is tough, so for a lot of students. So it's something. You join clubs, yes, you socialize, you meet people, but you're developing, especially if you go into some of the leadership positions in the clubs, right? That I think are good. That's what they're looking for in the resumes. They're looking for those kind of skills.
Yeah, definitely. I know there's a question also about what are the best ways to get valuable experiences, and I can speak to that a little bit. What helped for me as a freshman was, like you mentioned, kind of mentioning the clubs that I was in, including that on my resume. And I think joining clubs that are fun is really important. I was in a club called Adventure Club for a while. That was just purely silly fun. But I was also joining clubs that were very intentional in my interests and related to my major, and showed that I was taking an extra step outside of classes to develop these experiences. And as a freshman, they don't really expect that you know a whole lot, but they are looking to see that you're passionate. And clubs is one way to do that. The other thing I was doing side projects. I was looking for ways, like the hackathons I mentioned earlier, finding different avenues to pursue my interests and show that I was willing to go beyond my classes to look for ways to exhibit my passion for these things. And then the other thing as a freshman that, there aren't a lot of internships available, so don't beat yourself up if you don't find an internship after your freshman year. But what is available, especially to a lot of people that are interested in computer science, is these freshman programs. A lot of large tech companies are now gearing specific experiences and opportunities for women in STEM that are freshmen. And I can't remember the names from the top of my head, but I did do one at Pinterest, for example, and I think it was called Engage Scholars. And so it was a 1-month program where they essentially walked me through what it's like to be a software engineer, and we were practicing coding questions for interviews, and we got to talk to people that were leaders at the organization and stuff like that. And so it was a way for me to get my foot in the door, and they weren't paying me. I wasn't doing any work for them, but it was simply a way of networking. And so networking, again, is a really big piece that's really important to getting internships. I learned that a lot later than I wish I had, but you want to make sure that you're talking to as many people as you can. If that looks like a cold email, that's totally okay. If you are just messaging people on LinkedIn that you don't know, totally fine. That has helped me a lot in setting up meetings with people that would then lead to a referral for a job, or just more knowledge about what that job looks like that helped me in my next interview. And clubs, again, are a really great way of networking. I made a lot of friends when I was a freshman that were 2-3 years older than me. And so when they were graduating, and now when I'm looking for a job, I have people I know that are working at 50, 100 companies. And so I'm able to have a contact there that can get me my foot in the door. And so I think that's really important to keep in mind when you're looking for internships and jobs, and making sure you're staying up to date with things like LinkedIn and your resume is up to date, and making sure you're going to the career center and having people cross-check your resume and things like that. Just really taking advantage of the resources that are available to you. I hope that provides some insight.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and so I guess that leads me to reflection and something that I've been doing while putting this presentation together. But now that I'm a senior in college, it's been a couple years since I've been a senior in high school, and so a lot has changed, and a lot of how I would approach my experience changed as well. And so I'll talk a bit about what would have been valuable to been thinking about while I was applying for colleges. So if I had a time machine, when I was in high school, I would have loved to research the schools more. I think that is really, really important. I wish I had spent more time trying to understand the resources that were available on campuses. I had no idea that it took 3 hours to get from the Chicago airport to Urbana-Champaign. And so those are things I wish I had known. Not that it would have necessarily changed my decision, but I think, research will give you the tools you need to come to a decision that it will be best for your future. And then talking to students on campus, and I wish when I had come to visit campus that I had taken that opportunity to meet with people that were students there, because I didn't know any students coming into school that went here. And so I wish, I had, talked more to the person that was leading the campus tour, or just like ask someone at Starbucks, like, hey, you have a minute to chat. Anything that would have given me a little bit more insight about what it was like to be a student here. And then after being a student, I wish I, as a freshman, joined a lot more clubs and went to more social events. I was definitely a lot more introverted as a freshman, and I was, worried about what other people thought about me and how I would fit in. And so I only joined, I think, one club my freshman year, which was Design for America, which worked out well for me. But I wish I had taken that opportunity to just explore more. And I had no idea where that would have led me, and if other interests would have developed. But again, I think it would have been a great way to meet more people and just have more fun. And then I also wish, like I mentioned before, I wish I would have networked more. I think I learned pretty late that networking is a really important part of being a student, being a professional, and just getting to know more people and understanding their career experiences, and also just using them as resources. People are more than willing to help you out, especially when you are younger. And there's wonderful adult women in STEM that are looking to kind of help the next generation into similar jobs. And so making sure to network more and just talk to people and making use of that, really important. And same with talking to more professionals in the industry. I just, would have loved to know more about what it was like to be, a professional in technology before I just, got thrown in there and had to learn for myself. Yeah, any questions about any of that before I jump into, college visits? Okay, cool. Then I will talk about college visits. So what should you keep in mind while visiting potential colleges? So here's kind of a list of the tips and tricks that I was keeping in mind or have realized after what I should have done while visiting colleges. And the first is taking a walking tour throughout the campus. And I think most colleges offer this as a prospective student. And essentially you are taken throughout campus by someone that is paid to be a tour guide, and they are really knowledgeable about the campus and will show you a lot of different buildings and walk you through, at my school there we have a quad and we have different libraries and dorms, and they'll just take you around so that you get a feel for the campus and are able to see how big it is, what interesting facts there are about the campus. And you kind of can visualize, you should check if you can visualize yourself as being a student there. Another important thing to do while doing a college visit is talking to students. So again, talk to that tour guide, ask them if they know anyone in your major that you could talk to, make use of people that are running your department, set up meetings with them, talk to students that are in those majors, just approach people. People are really friendly. Just ask them if you can have 5 minutes of their time and ask them questions about what their experience has been like, what their favorite parts of, the college experience has been. And it's also really important to know what parts they feel negative towards. Is there anything that they struggle with? Is there anything that they wish they had done differently? Is there anything they regret about choosing this college? Because that will just give you a lot of authentic information when it comes time to make your decision. And then also make sure, aside from the walking tour, that you're exploring the buildings and the libraries and dorms. Libraries are a great resource, and you want to check them out and see, does it feel like a good study space? What do the buildings look like on campus? Are they accessible? Do you feel comfortable in them? And then are the dorms close to things that, if you care about? Are they close to the library? If you have to walk home at 2 a.m., is the bus system going to allow you to do that? Think about those kind of things, and then also look into the student resource centers and see what resources are available to you as a student, and compare and contrast between different colleges that you're visiting. And then make sure to ask a lot of questions. And so some of the ones I mentioned are really valuable, but just think about what your experience will look like there, and then the questions you have about that experience. And there's also lists that exist online about which questions to ask. So I would definitely make use of those. And then also walk through the surrounding areas and communities and make sure if you're leaving campus, do you still feel comfortable and safe? Are you intrigued by what is going on around the community? Again, at my school, we have a really cool campus town, but there also is a really amazing surrounding community that I visit often. And I've, had projects with, and so I've gotten to know the community around me. And then while you're there, also remember to record your visit. And maybe that doesn't have to mean literally recording on your phone, but make sure you're writing down things that you're noticing, so that when it comes time to make that decision, you can compare all these schools and make sure you have and remember all the information that you thought about while doing the college visit. So yeah, that was kind of everything I had to share. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or unmute and ask them now. But also, if you have questions later on, you can always email me. I'm more than happy to respond at a later time. But I hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Reggie. That was very helpful. I think the only thing I wanted to add, you mentioned earlier about when you go to the college visits, you get those vibes, right? And I think, when you visit colleges, you have a chance to walk around, you ask questions, and, it's what do we call it? That gut feeling, like when you go to schools and you're like, okay, I have this vibe. I feel like I'm at home, like I fit in, like you see yourself on campus and you're like, yeah, I feel like I fit in. Because sometimes you go to some schools and you walk in the middle and you're like, well, I don't know. It goes back to the vibes and the gut feeling. So yeah, you have to keep that in mind, right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I kind of knew when I was visiting Arizona State University, or even another school I applied to, UC Irvine, I just didn't like it there. It didn't feel right. I didn't like how it was structured. I just didn't like it. I couldn't tell why, but I knew I just didn't want to be there, and that was an indicator for me, and a thing that I would not have realized had I not visited the campus. So yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. Yes. And then I know there's a question in the chat about what are some must-ask questions you recommend asking in campus tours? I think the ones that come immediately to mind are, what is that person's favorite thing about the campus? Where do they go to study? Who do they go to when they have questions? What does the healthcare system look like on campus? Are there mental health resources? If you get sick, where do you go? Are there people that are willing to help you out? Ask questions about the dorm specifically, and if that is a college that you're considering, what dorm is the most social or the most academic based on the kind of interest that you have in the dorms. Other questions could be about the food, and if you have food allergies or different criteria, is the college conscious of that? Also ask about the accessibility. of the school. I know our campus does a great job making sure that we are a very accessible campus. And so, but if that's something that's important to you, make sure to ask those questions. And then also, if you're talking to a student that's in your major, ask about what resources are available when you need help. Are the TAs knowledgeable? Are they helpful? What professors are best for certain classes? Yeah, those are just kind of questions I'm like spitballing off the top of my head, but I know there's a lot of great resources if you look online about just questions to ask during a campus tour. A lot of great resources are available.
Awesome. Okay, so there's another question.
What are some career and personality tests that you recommend to help learn about different jobs? Oh, that's a great question. I don't know if I remember the names of these tests from the top of my head, but if you Google personality tests, there's really fun ones that will just give a better indication to you about if you're someone that is an extrovert, if you're someone that likes jobs that are centered around people, if you're someone that prefers desk job. That will give you an indicator about what kind of work you could be interested in. And then I don't know a whole lot about like the test specifically, but I think you should think about what kind of environments you feel comfortable in. For me personally, I definitely love talking to people, and so I know I could never be in a job that I had to sit at a desk for like 8 hours and not have any meetings, and I was just working on myself. I wanted to make sure that I was working in a job that had a lot of people interaction, that I was working with different types of people, I was getting to know people, stuff like that. And then also one that was constantly changing, because I didn't want to get stuck in one type of, job. And so it was something with like able to navigate different types of problems from the day-to-day perspective. But yeah, I'm not sure if that helped a lot. I don't know a lot about career tests, but I'm sure if you looked them up, you might be able to find some good stuff.
Yeah, I think there's like some Brigid-Myers, and there's certain tests that you can take. Yeah, so absolutely, we can give you some links to some of those tests that can be taken, just to give you a general sense of what kind of personality you have, right, and what fits best into what type of careers. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, Raji. First of all, thank you for being our guest speaker, and thank you for sharing your personal journey. We very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Then just some reminders, students, please register for the March educational session on the basic concepts of coding. And then keep in mind the April 15 deadline for the scholarship is coming up. Plan accordingly so that you have plenty of time to complete your application and submit it on time. Again, thank you everyone for joining the session, and a big thank you to our students as well as Raji for attending, and our school administrators as well. Thank you guys, and have a nice evening. Awesome. Thank you.